All right, I am Denise Williams, and this is for my 581 class, and I'm here with Laura Cole, who is a co-teacher of mine and a very good teacher, and I teach. I'm the ESL teacher for one of her students, Jordy, so we're going to be talking about him a little bit. So why don't we start? Why don't you just tell me a little bit about Jordy?
Jordy is, this is his second year in the country, so his English has come a long way. He is really strong in math, and he loves math because he knows that's one of his strengths. He gets along really well with all the other students, and he's pretty good at communicating his needs, and he's just a really sweet kid.
He is a sweet kid. I agree. I love him. So what positive things do you think he brings to your classroom?
Jordy, he has really taken a leadership role with some of our newcomers because he knows that he was there.
Yeah, that's so
a
great.
year ago.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so we have a couple of newcomers, and he loves helping them. And he's a huge leader for us in our classroom. He also just he thinks about things very deeply, so he'll write me notes about how he appreciates me and things like that. Today he wrote me a note that said that I was a professional. And he was so proud for knowing that word.
I bet. That's great to hear.
Yeah, he's really kind to everyone. He really is just a great helper and brings a lot to our classroom.
That's so good to hear.
Yeah.
And I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
He is a very kind child and really helpful to the other students.
Yeah.
I feel fortunate to have him as a student.
Yeah, I do too.
So his access score shows, as a third grader, that his composite is a 2.7, and that his strength is in writing with a 3.1, but that he could do some improvement with reading, 2.4.
Yeah.
So does that sound like him to you, or do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that sounds like him. He really struggles with the decoding. I think because in his brain he's having to, at each word he decodes, put it into Spanish and think about what it means in English. Where if I read a text aloud, his comprehension is pretty good. He usually understands most of what's happening, but I think the decoding and seeing the words as he's reading just is still a struggle for him. But when he's writing, I think it's a little bit easier because he can just he's thinking in Spanish and then writing it in English, and he has really good ideas with his writing. He just struggles to organize them in a way that makes sense.
Right. Okay. That sounds good. So what are some of the things that you do in the classroom to enhance his English language?
One thing I try to do, especially like in math, because math is one of his strengths, but math has a lot of word problems, and I don't want him to get bogged down trying to decode the problem. So I'll put pictures with the word problems.
That's great.
So that he'll see it's about gorillas. There's a gorilla, so he doesn't have to spend time thinking about what that is.
That's a great idea.
And then also, like with science, this week we were learning about biomes. So I used some Brain Pop in Spanish videos for him to watch in Spanish, and then he actually wrote down his research in English, but he got to kind of receive that information in his native language.
Right, and that's so good that you did that. Some teachers don't realize the importance of doing that for many reasons, just, even so they'll feel like they are a part of the classroom.
Right.
So that was a great idea.
Thank you.
So I thought I would give you some suggestions on some writing and reading strategies that might be good.
Okay.
And these also go along with his PSP and the WIDA access that he took. These are can-do descriptors that I'm using to kind of give some ideas that might help him.
Okay.
So I think one thing we could do for writing is to use some graphic organizers to set up the writing or for pre-writing. I think this will help him in the organization piece. and help him be able to get his thoughts in order.
Okay.
And then he can self-assess this way, I think, because he will be focusing on areas where he knows that he has trouble organizing, and so that will help him in that way.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds really good.
Yeah, and I think an interactive writing experience would be great for either you or me. Either one of us could do this with him. I think if he can communicate with his teachers by writing, then that will give him a purpose.
Yeah.
And will also give him some confidence.
Yeah.
And I think seeing our response would be a great model for him for correct form and function.
Yeah, he would love that.
Yeah, he would. And then I thought about some ideas for reading, and especially with decoding. So specifically, I think anything that would have to do with matching word families, that's just, kind of an
Okay.
example of a skill.
Yeah.
But I think we need to do a lot of matching with him, voice to print, oral matching, rhyming. And then we could assess that with a checklist, just
Okay.
a pre-made checklist. And then he also needs some extended practice in sounds that are not in his native language. I've
Okay.
noticed that when working with him, that with all EL students, that they all, for example, since he's a Spanish speaker, they have a really hard time with the letter G because they don't really use that sound in their language, so it's really hard.
Yeah.
I have a hard time, I've noticed, when I'm teaching them and they tell me that Y says E.
Yeah.
I have a hard time with that, so I try to empathize with them with that.
Yeah.
And two things I think we could do with his reading is, first of all, to do a rubric, especially with the phoneme situation, so that he can see where he's mastering his letters and where he needs more work.
Okay.
And then I think a KWL chart would be great for all his reading strategies, so that he himself can see what he knows and what he needs to know.
Yeah, that'd be
So.
great.
Well, I look forward to working with you more.
Yeah, thank you so much for
Thank
your help
you.
with him.